The reason it's doing that is because the higher its frequency it becomes, it's becoming lighter and lighter and lighter. And once it becomes as light as a photon, it's easy for it to do the speed of light. In fact, it requires very little energy in the form of propulsion to move a solid spacecraft made of photons, made of light, because they have no mass. So,
and is it your opinion, David, and or Dan, that what's going on at Area 51 and other secret areas is experimentation in exactly this technology?
Probably not as advanced as this, David.
Probably not as advanced, but I can tell you one thing about Area 51 that I've done some research into, and that is that a company called EG&G.
Oh, I know them well.
One of the top 4 defense contractors in 1968 boasted that they had a successful demonstration of a nuclear propulsion system called Phobos 2A. Now, that would be a radioactive nuclear propulsion system. Because we know that we haven't actually developed truly non-radioactive nuclear power sources yet.
We think we haven't. Anyway.
I worked with some of the top nuclear fusion scientists in the world. I spoke in Congress in fusion in 1992, and there is definitely a retardation in our country to funding truly non-radioactive types of fusion, and we haven't gone there yet. So one of the signatures you could look for in discerning between an experimental craft such as those being developed at Area 51 that are nuclear propulsion systems, is that there would be radioactivity evident. And that would mean during a sighting or encounter, you might receive radiation burns. We can't assume that someone coming from a star system like Sirius or Alpha Centauri is going to be exposing themselves to radiation because they would die long before they got here. So when we see radiation around spacecraft, harmful radiation, I should point out, we might be seeing a signature that we're looking at something that was developed at Area 51 or somewhere else on the Earth. There's some sort of experimental craft. But non-radioactive nuclear energy, then certainly getting into zero-point energy and gravity beyond light-speed theory or magnetism beyond light-speed theory craft, which is what I think we're looking at in the video, they're obviously far beyond nuclear fusion. I'll give you an example. In about 1989, 1990, I met Dr. Glenn Seaborg, who chaired the Atomic Energy Commission under Kennedy, Johnson, and Nixon. And he was getting involved in a type of non-radioactive nuclear fusion called helium-3 fusion, developed by a scientist I know very well from MIT named Dr. Bogdan Maglish. And I asked Seaborg about zero-point energy and these alternative energy developers, and he said, if anyone had developed a gravity generator, they would have the most advanced form of energy, so far advanced that even it would make nuclear fusion obsolete. And he said, I don't believe anyone's developing anything like that on the Earth today.
Well, they should be, because look at the
they should be. And I think that's what these UFOs, again, another benevolent signal. The pulsing waves coming off of the UFO and studying those waves and revealing how they're levitating their craft. And then when I met Canadian scientist John Hutchison, I saw he was doing the same thing and it was working.
Well, I think we're on to this technology to some degree. I just think that it's being suppressed for
it is. Hutchison has had McDonnell Douglas, Lockheed Martin, all of the defense contractors come up and try to study his technology and try to duplicate it. And I think they're on to him, and I think we're heading in the right direction, but again, we're very slow. We're very, very slow.
All right, you two, hold on. We'll be right back. I'm Mark Bell. Dan Aykroyd and David Sarita are here. This is Coast to Coast AM, roaring through the nighttime like a freight train. Stay right there.
618-8255. East of the Rockies, 1-800-825-5033. First-time callers may recharge at 1-775-727-1222. Or use the wildcard line at 1-775-727-1295. To recharge on the toll-free international line, call your AT&T operator and have them dial 800-893-0903. This is Coast to Coast AM with Art Bell on the Premier Radio Networks.
From space, you surely can see miles and miles and miles. And if these things that we're all seeing, or many of us, are real, then NASA has seen them. NASA, in all likelihood, has a pretty good idea of what they are. And I still think it's a really good question, maybe a hard political question, but a good one. How come they're not telling us? Dan Aykroyd's new show is going to be called Out There on the Sci-Fi Channel. Dan, are you going to have David on and some of this footage?
Oh, absolutely. David is one of our key guests. Very excited to have him on. Show the footage, discuss the topic of the Syrian, the benevolent Syrians who may be helping us heal our ozone, and many other subjects, hopefully in subsequent shows. I know that we only have a half hour with each guest, but we're going to get into a full range of subjects. I'm sure David will be a frequent guest. And our answer to your question about why they don't reveal this, why there's no open discussion here on these matters.
Right.
Well, there was a congressional study done in the 50s about what this knowledge would do to Western society, and it was concluded in that study that there'd be a general breakdown of respect for authority.
Mm-hmm.
And oh, wait a minute.
That's the Brookings report. You're talking about the Brookings report.
Yes, of course.
Yeah. What are we? Oh, we're supposed to respect the teacher, the cop on the street, the military man, and the president when there's a higher being and a higher force out there. Wait a minute. Hold on. Get out of the way. Get out of the way. We want to talk to him. We want to talk to that entity.
That's right.
And you'd have that breakdown in society, that disrespect for authority, people not going to work, people not going to church. Well, this is the theory anyway. I think humankind at this point, today, in the year 2001, with all that's happening on the planet, with 50% of the people in polls taken all the time believing in paranormal and supernatural events, that there is much more beyond the four dimensions that we live in, much more than we see. I think people are ready to handle it. And I think that Brookings report was done in, a half a century ago, and times have changed, technology's changed, and I think people are ready for a revelation.
Well, to some degree, perhaps, Dan, but I'll tell you, I talk to a number of fundamentalists on this program all the time. They're not ready.
But it's all from God. It all comes from God. It all comes from the divine being. It doesn't undermine God in any way. I don't see where it undermines God or anything Judeo-Christian at all.
You've done your movies about ghosts, lighthearted stuff. Do you believe in them?
Oh, yes, absolutely. All one has to do is read the tremendous books that were out in the 70s and 80s about the ghost of Flight 401, Lockheed L-1011 that crashed in the swamp in Florida.
You bet.
That is a compelling ghost story, and that's one I frequently tell around the fire here in Canada. There are many, many books out. I have photos that were taken. We took a bike ride up through Louisiana and into Mississippi, and we went to the Myrtles plantation there. And with our Harleys, we pulled up on our leathers. We were walking around, and I have Polaroids of things in behind my friends' heads. Shapes, shrouds, shrouded figures, right there on camera. And people purport that the Myrtles is one of the most haunted places in America. I've spoken to United States Park Rangers who work at Ellis Island, and they say that walking those parapets at night, they have seen gray apparitions. They've felt cold spots. They've heard voices. Hans Holzer was a great researcher of all of this stuff, and he's got audio tapes of otherworldly voices that that just are again, compelling evidence.
Well, okay, I agree with you. I too believe in ghosts. I've heard the stories for years and years and years, so compelling, and I've seen a lot of very compelling photographs. So I believe. What I'm interested in though is the possibility that these ghosts or these entities are hard to separate from some of what we're talking about with David. We don't really know that they're from necessarily Sirius or who they are or what dimension they're from or anything else about them, in quotes. And I'm not so sure that all of this is not connected.
Well, remember, Art, I mentioned how these higher spectrum of light, which
Yes.
is essentially higher energy.
Yes, well, David, if you look at NIDS and people who have done work in UV, for example, they have seen things that would just blow your mind. They've seen openings in midair with creatures crawling out in light spectrum that we can't see. All of that relates to what you're talking about.
Exactly. I mean, one night I was going crazy because you had a woman on in the Los Angeles area who was taking pictures in the ultraviolet and seeing these UFOs show up that weren't showing up in regular view, and I knew the answer, and I was trying to get through on the line, but I couldn't. But also in regards to Sirius, and when you mentioned NASA, do they know? Your most profound space science researcher, Richard Hoagland, stated on your show that on May 27th, 1999, NASA launched STS Mission 96 at 6:50 a.m. Eastern Daylight Time with Sirius at 33.33 degrees on the horizon. And that number, 33.33 degrees, is the highest number in symbology in Masonic wisdom.
That's true.
And we know the founding fathers of our Constitution were all Masons. And we know that people very high up at NASA are also very aware of Masonic symbology. So
Yes.
why, again, was it Sirius 3 years later, after STS 75, which was in 1996, and now we got 3 years later and 33.33 degrees, and Sirius, it's Sirius that's on the horizon. So I postulate that NASA may know and have figured out the same thing I have, and I'm just one step behind them.
There you are.
And that they know who our visitors are, and they said it in a very subtle way. And all we had to do was decipher it, and thanks to Richard Hoagland, we have that fact.
Right. What about their quest for zero-point energy? Do you think there's any evidence that...
Well, now, again, in 1996, mysterious or not, the same year as the mission of the STS-75 incident, NASA opens up a new division headed by a very young physicist around the same age as me, Dr. Mark Millis, into research into zero-point energy, quantum ideas, and even beyond light speed theory high technologies. So NASA suddenly became very interested in 1996 and funded this new division into zero-point energy, something that previously they weren't interested in. Why was it all happening around that year? Also, an astronaut who was on board that particular mission, Dr. Franklin Chang Diaz, who saw whatever we're seeing on the video take live that day, we saw pulsing UFOs. Dr. Franklin Chang Diaz became the head of the Johnson Space Center's propulsion lab, and he developed a pulsed plasma rocket just a few years later. Was he trying in his own way to reverse engineer the kind of physics he thought he was seeing that day? There's just so many coincidences as we go through this investigation, and I think people should look and take a look at this documentary and the video and see and read the book if they can, and make their own decision. I've shown arguments on NASA's side as to why they think they're not UFOs, some scientists at NASA that are mystified, and from the viewpoint that these are unidentified flying objects. And I think I've shown all sides in this case, and people can make up their minds in the end who they want to believe.
Well, the people who would have seen a lot of this are the astronauts. Now, the astronauts, including those who went to the moon, have all had incredibly difficult lives since their missions, as though they are aware of something, and they're keeping it inside. I mean, they have had about bouts with alcoholism at just an astounding rate, loss of families, divorces, all kinds of very difficult things have happened to these guys who had the right stuff.
But a few have come out and said that they've seen things.
Yes, sir, they have.
And so there are NASA employees, NASA first-hand astronauts, space travelers, star travelers of earthly origin, who are humans, who are of our consciousness and intelligence, who are admitting that there is much more.
You bet.
One of the most compelling shows, Art, that you ever had on was the night that you played the 911 calls in Liberty County, Ohio.
I agree.
Remember that?
Oh, of course I do.
That was a fantastic show because you had, and you went with it, because you played 45 minutes of these cops chasing UFOs, all over the countryside.
Yes.
Culminating with the guy climbing up in the water tower and seeing 4 of them go over his head. Incredible.
It didn't need comment. We just laid it out on the air. You could hear it for yourself.
It was beautiful. It was just vivid and wonderful. And it's that type of thing. And as just a blanket sort of, anybody who comes up to me and says, well, how can you believe in ghosts and supernatural and the paranormal? What proof is there? I say, well, go to Marfa, Texas.
Oh, yes. The Marfa
Go to
Labs.
Alpine and go 30 miles west of Alpine and park your car at the state-certified paranormal mystery parking lot. Because the state of Texas has right there, Marfa Mystery Lights, and gives you a little table and a chair and place to pull your RV over and watch those lights, and they appear every night between dusk and dawn, and they hop around, they change colors. I've sighted them with an infrared viewer, I've seen them with the naked eye, I've had people with me. The thing is, there's nothing out there to produce them. There's no gas, it's not a car, it's not a generator.
But they're there.
They're there. And that is a true paranormal mystery, and one recognized by the state of Texas.
And by the way, here in Nevada, to give ourselves a plug, we've got something called the Extraterrestrial Highway.
Recognized by the state of Nevada.
That's right.
Yeah. I almost hit a cow there a couple of years ago on a photos. Going up to the Little Alien.
Oh, yes. Oh, you've been there.
I've been to Rachel, seen the mailbox. And what is great about the Little Alien is you go into the corner as you're eating your burger and having your milkshake, and with all the fine people there, Pat and everybody. On the wall is just the most vivid and spectacular collection of home assembled photos of UFOs.
Mm-hmm.
People just, they tack these photos up, and they've been coming from all over the world for years, and there's a great display there that kind of rivals the one at the Roswell Museum.
Well, I think, personally, that that this is all very obvious to my listeners, to the two of you, to myself, and I think that you're right. I think that the Brookings Institution study is still in force, and I believe that at the highest levels in this country, they've determined that this information cannot get out. Simply cannot get out. And I don't know, with shows like mine, with shows like the one you've got coming, Dan, and the information you've got, David, if it's really this serious, they're not going to really let this get out. Not to the point where there's a public epiphany, and everybody suddenly realizes that it really is true. They're just not going to, they can't let it happen.
Well, thanks to people like you and Dan that you guys have had the courage to open these doors and let people know, and that's why so many people stay up so late at night just to hear this, because they want to know the truth.
Well, Dan, how do you, there are stars in Hollywood that lend themselves to political points of view or whatever. You've done something else entirely here. You're lending your voice, your celebrity, to this cause. So you must feel awfully strongly about it.
Well, I do. I like truth to be told, and there are thousands and thousands of people out there who around the world who've been taken, and we haven't even gotten into that phenomenon, into the work of Bud Hopkins and John Mack, and you can't, and these are people from all walks of life, and Herb Shermer, the highway patrolman in Nebraska who went aboard a ship
Oh, yes.
and spoke of that. Barney and Betty Hill, the Allagash guys, the Pascagoula guys, the Hopkinsville incident, you know, these people told their friends, and their friends told their friends, and so there are people out there who know.
Are you pretty well convinced, Dan, that these creatures have our best interests at heart? Or, you know, there's people like Dr. David Jacobs who write that they may not be what we think they are. And those who come back, you know, from these kidnappings or these abductions may have...
Hello, you guys?
Yes, hello.
Oh, sorry, I had my handset cut out here.
Oh, okay. Yeah. Are you familiar with the work of Dr. Jacobs? Dr. David Jacobs?
I'm not sure.
Okay, well, it's simple. He doesn't think these are such friendly creatures at all, and he thinks those who have been abducted have been brainwashed, and he said we should be very, very cautious. Now, you obviously seem to think they're pretty friendly.
Well, the ones that David writes about, the Syrian theory, those are benevolent species. I believe that there are non-benevolent ones at all, and I think there are probably training programs underway at certain levels of the military, and there should be with a defensive stance. Now, Stephen Greer says that we should not be developing the missile defense shield. We should not be developing stiff-oriented weapons at all because they, I guess, will act as a deterrent to these species coming down to try to make contact. But
Well, Dr. Greer...
I think it helps to have something in reserve.
Dr. Greer thinks we're crazy to be developing space-based weapons systems, and he thinks we've been shooting at these things.
Well, there is that footage, David, that you showed me of some kind of a high-speed craft coming towards Earth, and then a beam comes up from the planet, from Earth, and it misses it, and then the thing makes a right angle turn and kind of...
Yeah, I actually have a lot of research, and I didn't go into it in this investigation, of what are known as ultra-light weapons, which would attack them in their frequency. But the Undersecretary of Defense for Acquisition and Technology, a wealth of information in that agency as to the most advanced defense capabilities we have, I'm very well aware of.
The footage that Dan just talked about, is that in your...
Yeah, we have several incidents in this documentary. The tether is only one.
Yeah, you actually see a beam come up. I'm familiar with it.
Yeah, there's a lot of things. We've got a gathering over Africa of about 8 or 9 UFOs gathering in a circle. We have a UFO manifesting from another dimension. We've got a UFO that I'm able to calculate speed on at over 900,000 miles an hour, moving over the curvature of the Earth and disappearing on the horizon. We have a high-speed, nearly 90-degree turn, which is something that just baffles physicists' minds. There's an incredible amount of footage and investigation and a lot of compelling theories and arguments going along with each piece of footage.
All right, and this is available again at a phone number right now, I presume now?
Right now, yeah.
Okay.
For $24.95, a 2-video set, it's 1-877 UFO NASA.
This is the real thing. Now, incidentally, the Brookings Institution was an American sponsored document, and in Europe, in Belgium, you know, you had the Air Force general on there talking about his F-15s chasing craft that were going 7,500 miles an hour. There doesn't seem to be this blanket denial in the public relation mechanisms of many European governments. There's people who are quite open in the French have just come out with a large disclosure project there in the last couple of years.
Even the Mexicans, Dan, they've had collisions with UFOs out of Mexico City.
Right, and they talk about it.
Yeah, they talk about it.
Yeah.
But we don't.
And the Brazilian defense guy there who was in the last couple of years speaking about his activities and his studies and the investigations that he undertook.
Well, listen, to we're out of show. We're out of time. Boy, that went fast. that was 3 hours. Boom, just like that.
Well, we've got to do it again sometime. And Art, if I can convince you to come to New York City, I'd love to have you on my show. And I've got to get out to the high desert because I need a good dose of that pure, beautiful air and that great, endless sky.
Dan, thank you. Thank you, my friend. David, good night.
Good night.
Night.
Thank you, Art.